Pasta is traditionally served as a side dish in Italian cuisine. True or false?
False.
In Italian business culture, building personal relationships and trust is as important as discussing business matters. True or false?
True.
Italians strictly follow traffic rules and driving is very structured. True or false?
False.
Hi and welcome to ASHA Global Voices Podcast. My name is Tjasa Strle and I'm a cross-cultural leadership coach and the creator of ASHA Global Voice. Together with my guests, we are sharing stories from around the world about different cultures, leadership, and human experiences that connect us. If you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button. Your support means the world to me. And now, let's dive into today's episode. Hi and welcome to ASHA Global Voices Podcast. Today's guest is Gabriele Cipri from Italy. He is the founder and director of business development at a sustainable startup focused on microalgae-based food products. Gabriele is also an international business development consultant working in cutting-edge companies in healthcare, energy, and smart cities. Gabriele, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me here.
I'm super excited to talk more about Italy, about Italian culture, and everything that we will uncover today. And let's start with true or false statements. So the first one was that pasta is traditionally served as a side dish in Italian cuisine. And you said that this one is true. Can you tell us a bit more about it?
I said it's false because it's Italian. In Italy, pasta is not a side dish, but it's main dish. So actually, for us, since we are children, it's just pasta is just present almost in everyday diet. So it's the main dish of your life, basically, pasta and pizza. According to the different, let's say, cuisines, we have different cooking styles we have throughout Italy. There are also meat-based, fish-based, etc. But pasta still remains central and very, very closely connected with the word home. So it's pasta is basically something like home.
That's home. I like that. But as you mentioned, it's the main dish, so pasta is really present. But I thought that, the Italians eat pasta almost every day, but not always as a main dish. So, for example, you eat something else, but you also eat pasta.
Actually, so it is quite common. So, for example, today I had my lunch with a friend in let's say, quick restaurant. That's mainly very common eating in the weekdays in a restaurant or at a bar. And actually, we had a pasta for it as just a main dish. And because it's, when you have dinner, a very long dinner, you probably have an appetizer, some pasta, and something else. But this is a very huge dinner. So basically, I would say that in the normal life, pasta is just a one main dish with something, with sauce, with something. But it's not like a side dish, let's say.
Okay. Thank you for elaborating this. And I also remember when I was studying in Spain, I had a roommate. She was from Italy, and she literally ate pasta every day.
Yeah, it is quite common. So it's like very, I know many people, I would say 90% of the people I know eat pasta almost every day, at least once a day.
And one more thing that fascinated me, I just realized it a couple of days ago. Pasta, like you have, I would just say a number around 30 or even more different pastas, right? With specific names.
I would say more than 50, I would say.
More than 50.
Because every single, so Italy has a history that is of division. So basically, we were very much divided into single municipalities, single very tiny regions. So basically, everyone has created its own, and every city has its own dish. Almost every city, let's say, not all of them, but almost every city, but for sure, every region has its own way of doing pasta. So basically, you can find some regions, for example, Tuscany, Sicily, Marche, Abruzzo, that have so many different kind of pasta because they did it at home. So personally, I do it as well. I do pasta normally at home. So I prepare it with eggs and flour, not just by buying the package of pasta at the supermarket.
So we can say Italians really love pasta and also really know
Absolutely.
how to do pasta.
Absolutely. You are more than invited to come over and enjoy a dinner with me in Padova.
Absolutely. Invitation accepted. And if we move to the second statement, which was that in Italian business culture, building personal relationships and trust is as important as discussing business matters. You said that this one is true. Tell us a bit more
It
about
is.
it.
It is. Let's say, let me be very honest. So there are two ways of answering to this question in Italy. If you're talking about very internationalized places like, I would say, just Milan in Italy. So Milan is a city that plays on a different pitch compared to all the other Italian cities. If you are in Milan, probably relationship is not that important as numbers because it's more an international style. But the southern you go, the more a relationship is important. It's far more important than numbers. So at the end of the day, it's more important to get together with the person you're doing a business than the, let's say, the total amount of money that is invested itself. Of course, it very much depends on topic. Okay, so it's not just relational, but I would say that in Italy, relationships and business, so personal involvement is far more important than in other cultures. So concerning cultural, for example, there is for sure you're an expert in cultural distances. There is a very famous book that was written by Geert Hofstede, that is the cultural dimensions. For example, if I remember correctly, Italy is very collectivism culture and very value oriented. So the personal involvement is very important. Okay, like for example in Japan, or completely differently, like for example in Spain. You told me about your Erasmus in Spain, but completely different from, for example, the US, or I would say completely different from the UK also, I would say.
Absolutely great examples. And I also remember just an example. I have a friend, he's Italian, but he lives and works in Barcelona, so in Spain. And one time we were talking, and he said that I think somebody from another country who was like senior from him, from the company, arrived to Barcelona. And this friend, my Italian friend, he was basically the only one inviting him to his home for dinner, which was, I guess, very Italian.
Absolutely. So, for example, in Italy, it's very common to invite people that are important to you, not just business wise, but also personal wise at home. And I would say that's quite common for Southern European countries. So, for example, also for Spain, for Portugal. I would say also for Southern France, and a little bit less common for other European countries, but I would say that is most commonly accepted as normal. For example, in other cultures like Japan, I'm repeating also about Japan because I was in Tokyo just 2 months ago, 3 months ago. In Japan, it's pretty not likely, I would say, that you get an invitation from somebody to go home. So normally meetings, both personal and business meetings, are happening at a restaurant. They are not so much, let's say, involving. So let's say that, the Italian way of, so when you meet and greet person, normally in Italy, you shake hands. And if you have a close connection, you normally kiss the cheeks. So both of them. Okay. So like, or you give a hug. Okay. That's pretty common. Okay. So when you are familiar with a person, very familiar, so you are very closely connected, it's absolutely common, even though it's not part of the family.
And
Okay,
even if you're doing business,
less common, let's say. So that's less common. But for example, in Japan, you don't even touch the other person. Okay, so just very business wise people in Japan, very internationally oriented, they shake hands. But it is quite normal that they don't shake hands at all. So it is normal that they give you the business card, like with two hands, like making a little pound, and that's it. So that's already something very 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 important, even though you don't touch the other person.
That are great examples. It's really important to kind of educate yourself about different cultures because, yeah, as you mentioned, even how you greet each other, it's really important.
Absolutely. Yeah, and also, so if I can add something, for example, the only thing that works throughout the world, everywhere, is kindness. So being kind is like the most important thing everywhere in the world. That might seem like as given, like taken as given, but actually it's not. So it's not that it cannot be taken as given.
That's a great example, and I love it. So kindness is appreciated by everyone. And at the end, we are all humans, and we all appreciate kindness. Thank you
Yeah,
for sharing this. And
yeah.
if we move to the third statement, which was Italians strictly follow traffic rules and driving is very structured. You said
That's
that this one is false.
not that true, honestly. So, but that's let me defend my country. That's absolutely not true, but it's coming from another cultural point because Italy is very ancient, and normally cities have grown a lot in terms of dimension, but without changing the size of the road. So normally it is quite common that in Italy you find a lot of huge traffic in smaller cities just because they haven't built larger roads, larger streets. So basically, for example, you can imagine that Naples is very crowded, Rome is very crowded, Palermo is very crowded, Milan should be very crowded. Honestly, it's not. So Padova is a little bit more crowded than Milan concerning the traffic because Milan is a city that has grown a lot in terms of roads, in terms of new areas of the city, in terms of population in the last 100 years, let's say 120 years. And basically, they were able to enlarge the city as, let's say, as it was needed. Padova has remained more or less the same, so hasn't been enlarging roads. We are setting up the tram into some tram lines. That's something like coping with the new needs, but in another way. So it's like also a matter of culture. When you are packed in traffic, then you have to find ways to get out of it. But I would not suggest you to go to Naples or Rome driving yourself. It's quite a kind of tricky.
I've been to Palermo, but I didn't drive at the time. But I drove in some Italian cities that are closer to Slovenia.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's
my
very
probably my hometown.
interesting explanation, Gabriele. I have never thought about it.
Yeah.
But tell me, I'm interested, how important is family in Italian culture?
Look, it is important, very important, but in the last, I would say, so, the world has changed a lot in the last, I would say that there are some milestones in the last 50 years. Let's say, let's leave out the end of World War II, but then we can say that after the fall of Berlin Wall, there had been another milestones, and then after 9/11 in 9/11 2001, there is another milestone. But after that moment, so from 2001 until now, the world has changed a lot. So basically, also culturally, Italy has been more internationalized. I personally, the more I go around the world, and I travel quite a lot, the more I see that if 30 years ago there were a lot of distinction and distinctive features of every city, every part of the world. Now cultural differences are getting lower and lower, and this also applies to the concept of family in Italy. So if once it was very common to get together with the family every Sunday and make a very, very long lunch, like 6 hours in a row, like marathon. Nowadays, it's less common. It is, let's say, still common more in the south of Italy, where the culture is, let's say, a little bit more family oriented, more let's say, more close to Spain, as more Mediterranean. In the north of Italy is more, it's less involving in terms of familiar involvement. So basically, in the north, it's not that common. So, for example, personally, I live in Padua. My parents are still living in Udine, that is close to the Slovenian border, and I go there. I would say once in a month or at most twice in a month. So just to visit them. And it's not, so it would be, let's say, quite uncommon for me to go there every Sunday, even though it's just 150 kilometers. So it's just 1 hour and a half. It's not that much, but it's not, let's say, perceived as necessary.
It makes a lot of sense. And also they are not in the same city, which would make it easier.
Yeah.
And I also, your example of, basically the world becoming more and more globalized and cultures kind of becoming more fluid, yeah, I would say, because we
Absolutely.
are mixing each other, which is a really interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, it's like you go around the world and you see, for example, in the last 3 months, I went to Tokyo, to Manila, to Shanghai. Honestly, of course, they are absolutely different one from each other, and also absolutely different from Italy and from Europe. But for example, in Manila, there was a part of the city that is a very, very modern center that honestly, it could have been Dubai, it could have been Milan, it could have been Munich, it could have been Prague. Okay, a very, let's say, new part of the city, but they are, honestly, I think that the word is getting more and more anonymous. So, like, not differentiated. And personally, I don't like it so much. On the other side, you feel like comfortable with all the same shops, all the same bars, all the same cafeterias, all the same things. But at the end, we are losing a bit in value.
Definitely, it has pluses and minuses for sure.
Yeah.
But if we stick with the Italians a bit more, what would you say, in your opinion, what three characteristics would you use to best describe Italian?
Wow, that's tricky. But I would say empathic, welcoming, and I would say a bit, I don't know, not selfish, but let's say that Italians are very, on one side, proud. I would say proud. Okay, on one side, proud of Italy, but they like a lot to complain about Italy. But of course, if it's an Italian that complains about Italy, that's okay. If it's a foreigner, it's not. And so it's very, very strange. Like it's like quite tricky to understand it from a perspective of non-Italian. But we complain a lot of our country every day, every single day. Everybody complains. Everybody doesn't do anything to change, basically, because we like it as it is. And at the end, we are proud of it. And we are proud of our country with all its flip sides and defects.
Don't you think that, like in general, everybody, no matter where you were born or from which culture, you we are a bit sensitive if a foreigner talks badly about our country, but we can, of course.
Yeah, yeah. Let's say that. Let's put it this way. I will tell you a thing. When I was in Japan, I was like talking to a Japanese guy that is very open-minded and very international oriented. So no problem at all in terms of cultural barriers, let's say. And I was complaining about Italy. Okay, so I was complaining like, yeah, because this, and that, and so I was gesticulating like Italians do also. And he told me, like with a very serious face, why do you talk so bad about your country? You shouldn't. And I was like, why? And he told me, in Japan, we are very proud of our country. We never say anything bad about the country. You should be proud of it, and you should try to avoid telling bad things about your country if you don't want others to think bad about your country. Period. So that's absolutely true. But honestly, from the Italian perspective, we have so many issues in Italy, so many things that are awkward and absolutely strange and silly, I would say, that from a perspective of a foreigners, I would accept. some hints and some criticism.
A very valid point, yes. And you also mentioned that Italians, in your opinion, are empathetic.
Yeah, I would say that.
Tell me about this one.
So, for example, there are other countries, I won't mention them, but there are other countries in which if you try to find a suggestion or an indication of where a place is, of course, Google Maps helps, but not everybody uses Google Maps, and okay. But if in some other countries you just stop a person walking on the road and asking questions, there are some countries in which this is so it's not going anywhere because they don't help you. On the contrary, in Italy, they are very much helping. So it is very uncommon that somebody tells you I don't have time or tells you I don't know. They try to find a way for you. And I have to say it personally, from my personal experience, I've seen and I've done it as well. I've seen many times in which I got people to the place they wanted to reach because I thought it was not easy to reach. So it's just like it's being kind, but with purpose of the welcoming attitude, let's say.
I think they are great examples. Also, from my personal experiences, I always felt really welcomed in the company of Italians, and as well, yeah, they were kind and helpful and empathetic in a way, yeah, trying to understand whatever it was at the moment and trying to help.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's I would say that's true. So that's basically true.
Can you tell us now one gesture? I know Italians use many gestures in communication, but entertain us please with the
Look, everybody think that we are doing this, okay? So, but that's not. So let me be. This is an A1 Italian speaking, okay? So this gesture should be accompanied with some movements, okay? So this can be. So what does it mean? Do you know what does it mean? This
what? What are you saying? No,
exactly. This is like this, but not moving all the arm, but just
just
the
the hand,
the
yes.
wrist. Okay, just this. But if I do it this, it's like I'm hungry. If I
Hmm.
do this, if I look at you in a place and I do this, it's like I'm hungry. What about to? So I can tell you, it means I'm hungry. What about to go and eat something? Okay. Or also, if I do this, I turn to you and I tell you, this, it's crowded, it's full of people. So it's a lot of things. Or for example, if I do this, it's let's say let's meet here, or let's find a point. But that's more uncommon, let's say. But there are a lot of gestures. I think, and I can make a guess, I think we have a lot of gestures because we were very much divided, and the Italian language is quite young, I would say. So the first novel that was written in proper Italian, even though ancient Italian, it was I Promessi Sposi by Alessandro Manzoni. Probably you don't know him, but it's a famous Italian writer, very famous, that was deemed to be the first one writing in real Italian. And it was, let's say, the 19th century, I would say, so less than 200 years ago. Okay, so the Italian language is not that ancient Italian. Then before we had the Vulgar, we had Latin, etc. But so many languages, so we had probably, and I'm trying to guess, I'm not sure about that, we had to find ways to communicate even without words to make us understand others. And honestly, I can say that an Italian going abroad is able to survive even without speaking, I would say. Is able to survive, is able to find ways to eat, drink something just with a gesture. Probably because we are funny as well, but still.
It's like you are using a little bit of sign language as well.
Yeah, I did it on purpose. I did it on purpose for sure.
Great examples. And how do Italians view the concept of la dolce vita, which is the sweet life, and how
Ah,
does it influence, your daily life?
look, I can make a comparison. So, in my opinion, La Dolce Vita is more something that foreigners see of Italy, okay, because of the famous movie of by Federico Fellini. And yeah, beautiful, absolutely beautiful movie. But honestly, nowadays, La Dolce Vita is more for getting tourists. So I don't even think that La Dolce Vita is something applicable to the current Italian situation. It was more related to the 60s, let's say, when the movie was set. Yeah, let's say that now it is used as a touristic way. But for me, for myself, La Dolce Vita is also something to enjoy life from my point of view. It means also going out in the city center of my city and having a drink of Aperol Spritz or a beer, enjoying the beautiful view because almost all the cities in Italy, all the quite big cities, have an historical center. So the old town that is super ancient. So it's like there since 2000 years or 1500 years. And we are very much used to this. When we go abroad, for example, for somebody in Italy discovering and finding out that abroad they don't drink something before dinner. So it's like not common. In Italy is absolutely common. In the north of Italy is like a ritual. So, like after work, you just go with your friends or with your colleagues to have a beer or a glass of wine to talk a bit, to enjoy life, and then you go to dinner. But that's in as far as I know, at the moment, is just common in Italy, in the north of Italy, and more or less that's it. So that's enjoying La Dolce Vita, in my opinion.
And you eat dinners quite late, at least for Slovenians. What is the normal hour for dinner?
Let's say that at least at 8. So, first of all, it depends on your age, of course. So, if you are 70, 75, 80, probably you have dinner at 7, 7:30. But in the north of Italy is normally at least at 8, 8:30. In the south of Italy, it can be 8:39, and in summer we can have dinner at 9 also in the north of Italy without a problem. So it's getting late, of course, because it's warm. The warmer it is, normally in summer, in June here, there is light until 9 in the evening. So it's uncommon to have dinner when it's still sunny outside. So that's why.
And you start your work days at 9 o'clock approximately. Or
Normally,
what is the
yes.
time? At 9 o'clock.
Normally is 9 to 1 and 2 to 6 normally. So 4 hours, 4 hours. Then there can be, let's say, a flexibility, like you can arrive at 8 or you can arrive at 10. You can go up. So it's very much depends. But normally, yeah, offices start their routine, their daily routine at 9. Schools start at 8, for example.
What would you say are Italians, and also I know you travel so much and you have so many experiences with the people from different cultures. Would you say Italians are more direct or indirect in business communication? Which also
In
means
business,
yeah, please go.
let's say that I wouldn't say we are absolutely indirect. I wouldn't say we are absolutely direct. It's halfway, but more in the indirect. So, for example, Norwegian guys and Finnish guys are like yes, no, period. So, black or white. Okay, so this we can do, this we cannot. Japanese guys normally they are not able to say no. They use a certain expression that is like maybe means no, but they don't say no. Okay. Chinese guys are a little bit more straightforward. Okay. Italians are more indirect. They don't say absolutely not possible at all without any reason. You cannot even imagine nothing. No, but they say probably that's very difficult. Probably no. So it's a direct way, but not so direct. Okay, so they tell you no.
And not
for
as
sure.
direct, for example, as Norwegian.
No,
If
I
we
wouldn't say.
compare it, yeah.
Or
So
Germans as well.
on Germans. And how do Italians in general give negative or critical feedback?
That's strange because in my opinion, they try to find a way to let you understand that that was not good, but without telling you straightforward that was absolutely bad. Okay, like I got together with, for example, I got together with the CEO, and that's he's a little bit upset with me because I'm trying to get you together with him, and so it's not possible that you behave like this. It's better to do it in another way. So let's please do it in another way. So it's like a little bit of gray areas.
Okay, so not so direct.
No, not so direct.
And how would you describe the leadership style in Italy, like in general, in your opinion? Is it more hierarchical or more collaborative?
Look, this comes in handy a little bit of reasoning of the story and of the situation of the company size, okay, of Italian companies. Average size, sorry, of the Italian companies. In Italy, 99% of the companies are small and medium-sized enterprises. For example, in Germany, there are 96%. That may seem quite close, but it isn't, because 3% more of large enterprises, large companies, it's completely different. So it's another way of thinking. So basically, Italy is based on very small companies, very small enterprises. In that case, of course, the leadership style of the CEO, president, founder, or whatever is predominant for sure, because it is not very likely that the small company, is managed by external managers. Okay, so the founder, the owner, the family places the CEO, the president, and who decides. And the decisions are taken top down. So the CEO decides and goes down. It's, let's say, completely different from Japan. Sorry for always telling about Japan, but I got
It's
very much
interesting.
excited of that. In Japan, I was in Tokyo in December, and I got the chance to get together with a very important, the chairman of a very important institution of trade and commerce. And he told me, look, in Japan, it's very, very, very long way to get together and doing business with them. So you basically have to convince those people that arrive to you that are probably normally at the bottom of the hierarchy. If you convince them, they will try to convince other people, and they will try to form something that will go up to the part of the hierarchy. And then if all the organization decides to pursue a certain objectives, of course, the upper management, so the top management, cannot refuse to follow if the whole organization has agreed on a certain way of doing things. That's quite surprising for me, I have to say.
Yeah.
Okay, that's quite surprising. And it's not the way in which we, and I mean not Italians, but Europeans, we do normally. In this way, I would say that it's more hierarchical, I would say.
But for
Even though,
example,
of course, yeah.
is it common or is it appreciated that the feedback of a team member, for example, do leaders kind of bounce ideas together with the team, or they come and say, we are going to do that, you are going, and then assign kind of assignments?
I think that more than cultural, this is a point of entrepreneurial culture. So, in my opinion, in successful companies, enterprises, the kind of cliche phrases: the leader pulls you, and the boss pushes you. That leadership phrases that are very important, very nice for the mindset, but at the end of the day, it's not black or white. It's like the vision of a person to be, let's say, suggested by other people. That's, I would say, quite common in Italy. So normally the leaders, the business leaders, as they are leaders of smaller companies, they really try to select the people they have around them, and they of course take suggestions. That's for sure. But honestly, in other cases, there are also very big companies in which there are leaders that decide everything. But I mean, also companies in which won't say a name of the company, but the company that know very well that has 3 billion turnover every year, 3-4 billion euros. I mean, pretty big company, I would say. The leader decides everything. So the CEO decides every single thing. And it's uncommon, very crazy, but it is.
Absolutely. It also depends, as you mentioned, based on the leader and the company's culture. But for example, the Mexicans, they are really kind of used to authoritarian leadership. They also value someone who is charismatic, who makes the decisions because, and they even say it, if a leader in Mexico, for example, would be more, let's say, Norwegian style and would want to ask the team and try to kind of implement more collaborative style. Mexicans would usually see him as he doesn't know what he's doing,
Yeah,
which is
actually.
interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Absolutely. And I'm aware of this. Let's say that in Italy at the moment, if you are not collaborative, it's like people is not trusting you as a leader. And as the situation has changed over time about the let's say the job market, people is more willing to change. So we are getting more and more American style, let's say. So people is willing to change in case they don't feel well in a place in which they work. And also the younger generations, like, so I'm 37, let's say turning 38, pretending to be still 37. But I also work every day with people that are 10 years less younger than me, or 5, 10, 15 years younger than me. And honestly, I see a different attitude. So I don't say that they work more or less. Absolutely, they are very good worker, very good people. But on the other side, they have a different mindset. So, for example, they uh, they privilege work-life balance, for example. So, in my let's say amongst my generation, let's say, it's not, I feel old when I say this, but yeah, in my generation it was not that common. So it was like work as hell, work as hell and go ahead, work as hell and go ahead. And if you are going to miss a dinner out with your friends, or I don't know, a session of workout in the gym, no problem. So you were working. So working is so the working excuse is acceptable. For them, it's beginning to, let's say, be less work oriented. So I work as hard as possible between 9 to 6. But at 6, if I need to go to the gym, if I need to go and have a drink with my girlfriend or with my wife, whatever, I just go and that's it. We'll see each other tomorrow at 9. So that's good. That's good. That's good. I don't want to say that that's bad. That's different.
Good point. Yes. Also, the work culture changing with generations that are coming and having a different view and different values, as you said.
Yeah.
But tell me, Gabriele, what would be your advice to someone starting to work with Italians? If you would
Oh,
have to say one thing.
never refuse food. Refusing food is very, very, very bad. Very unpolite. So actually, also in the south of Italy, for example, it's even more it's even more well perceived to accept foods. It is normal in the South Italy to go and have lunch together and go ahead in this way, sit down, spending time together. Okay. In the north is less common, but in any case, for example, another thing is to be friendly. So like we like a lot to let's say to smile, to have, let's say, this positive attitude. So we don't like so much people that are just still there, serious. And so if you want to do business in Italy, it's better that you get used to smile and to eat, I would say, and to drink also wine. So I would say,
Easy, good food. I know
Quite easy.
Italians. I always ate good with Italians as well, drinking and yeah, having a good time.
Yeah.
And tell me, Gabriele, tell me a bit more about your work and what you do in the fields of business development and sustainability.
Well, look, I actually am quite an uncommon professional. So I work as a business development manager for a company that deals with medical devices, and on the other side, I'm also founder and business development responsible for a startup that works in the microalgae field with many different, let's say, aspects and differentiations. But basically, what I'm doing, I'm trying to get relationships. So basically, I'm trying to push mm, also friendships, basically, between two companies. So to cooperate, to get together. I would say it takes time for everything, not just on the international level, also in the national level. But basically, at this stage, my job is to create values and connections. So that's basically my job. It's quite easy if you see it that way. At the end, it's not so easy, but
Yeah,
still.
this is it's easy for you because you are Italian, because you are, as you mentioned, empathetic and polite and kind. But for real, tell me, what strategies would you say work best when expanding into new international markets?
Look, it very much depends on the market. So, for example, in my work, in my job, I have to really meticulously select the right partner in a certain market, because having the right partner opens up the right doors. And in a niche industry as the one of those kind of medical devices, it's very important to select the right person, the right point to be, say, the first flag on a certain country. So basically, then I follow an approach of waterfall. So basically, after setting up the first reference point, then from then onwards, we try to spread all over the country. And yeah, basically, it is dealing with many different countries in the world. Uh, so it's like, yeah.
And how do you usually find the first contact, the first good contact from another country?
Normally, you do a lot of business intelligence on the internet. You try to get in onto LinkedIn, emails, papers, or also even exhibitions, trade shows. Absolutely. Also, let's say that in certain kind of business sectors, business industries, still reputation is always very important, but still the offline, let's say, contact. So the in-person contact is still very important. So it is massively important. And in my opinion, at the end of the day, so for example, now everybody talks a lot about AI, about artificial intelligence. In my opinion, that can be a game changer for many different things that can be done without any effort, with effortless, completely without time consuming things. But at the end, personal relationship is unsubstitutable. So it's like the personal factor will be more and more important with the progresses of AI. Okay, so in my opinion, AI is just a way, a technology to empower people to pursue new things. Okay, so to expand their range of application.
Hopefully, let's see. But tell me a little bit more about your startup. So you are working with microalgae.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I've been working with microalgae since 2011. Been working in the pioneer of microalgae industry in Italy. Then I moved from there to another startup that was very central. So that was very centered in food application. That what I believe in. So I think that with microalgae we can do a lot for the future of the world, because they don't consume water, they don't consume fertile soil, and in addition they can absorb CO2 like 15 times trees on the same area occupied. So basically, they are a source of protein. So they can also be very useful to substitute meat protein that are quite very much impacting. But the thing we are working also now is on making sustainability as a service. So SaaS. So like normally SaaS is like software as a service, no? So it's like a different approach that was basically created 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and then it's going on. I created this new word that is sustainability as a service. So basically, we have the chance to design, develop, and build some production plants of microalgae to reduce the externalities of the negative externalities of other companies' processes. So, for example, in the oil and gas, in the food industry, in many other fields, they have a lot in energy. For example, they have a lot of externalities that may range from CO2 pollution or CO2 emissions or other kind of pollutions or whatever kind of negative externalities you can imagine. We can find the right microalgae to treat that externalities, reduce it, and also create biomass, microalgae biomass, to be used in other processes. So we can, for example, make extracts out of it, or we can use it for a feed application after purifying it, of course. But so there's a range of application that is incredibly big, incredibly big. And we see a lot of innovators that are getting together with us in many different fields to try to figure how we can cope with their process to let them be more sustainable and more, let's say, profitable at the end of the day. So when you are more sustainable, you are more profitable. If you reduce waste, you can increase the revenues and you can increase the profits.
Super, super interesting. Sounds fantastic. Also for the environment, sustainability, of course. So if I understood correctly, with microalgae, you can help companies kind of produce less waste.
Yeah. Basically, for example, I can tell you a case of a US-based company that extracts natural gas, and by extracting natural gas, they also have a huge emission of CO2. So basically, as they have a lot of very big investors, the investors are asking them, look, we have to reduce the CO2 emission, but not just on paper, not just telling we have reduced 3 kilos of CO2 last year. That's nothing. We have to reduce a lot. So we have to go to the stakeholders and tell, okay, look, guys, we are extracting natural gas, but we're with the CO2 that we emit by extracting natural gas, we cultivate microalgae, and out of those microalgae, we can get some protein flour to be used for veg burgers in the whole United States. We are still working on this with this customer. I hope that things are going through, but that's, in my opinion, a completely change of mindset. So a completely change of way of doing things. That it's true that we can avoid some emissions. It's also true that there are some emissions we cannot avoid. So we have to cope with them. If the emissions can cope with the microalgae needs of nourishment, that's the perfect match. So that's absolutely something very good for the future, and for the future also of in my opinion, of the Western world countries. So for example, our competitiveness is also based on some kind of self-reliance. So as we saw in the last years, from the COVID-19 onwards, we saw that the globalization was, let's say, getting somewhere not so manageable, and globalization can set up some new challenges that should be a little bit reduced, let's say, with a kind of a self-reliance in some terms, not of course autarky, let's say, but self-reliance of something. In my opinion, it would be very much beneficial for the whole European Union and maybe also the US.
Of course, if we could be self-reliant, would be
A little bit more.
fantastic. Yeah,
A little bit
and
more, let's say.
a little bit more, even better if we could be self-reliant as individuals. Just the
Exactly.
other day, I lost electricity for just a small amount, let's say 20 minutes, but nothing worked, you know, nothing.
Nothing.
I was cut
You are
off.
gone.
You're gone and it's winter, you cannot eat, you are cold. It's really challenging.
Exactly.
But I love the idea and I love what you're doing with your startup. It's a
Thanks.
great idea at the right time. Countries are, being more and more aware of sustainability, which is great, not just for the companies, but for us as human beings, for our nature. So I really wish you all the best and as much
Thank you.
success as possible.
Thank you very much.
And now I have one more question. This is the question that I always ask my guests. If you could imagine a better world to live in, what would that look like for people globally?
I would say um, a world in which there are no barriers in terms of racism, in terms of bad behaviors, in terms of so a world in which we can understand each other in a way that is not lowering differences but valuing, so adding values through differences. So basically accepting all the other ways of doing things and trying to, let's say, understand better the other cultures exactly like you are doing. So you are doing a great job. This is a great, absolute great podcast. And I wish you a huge success. And I think you are on the right track. Why? Basically because you are trying to and making people understanding each other, giving a point of reference for business, for personal life, for whatever kind of reason. But that's a footstep ahead.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Beautiful wish. I wish the same to understand each other better, to see our differences as uniqueness and also to try to understand each other. And thank you also for, kind of acknowledging what I'm doing. I do appreciate it. It was such a pleasure, Gabriele. Thank you for your time and for all the insights. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, Tjasa, to you.